Welcome back for the fourth and final season of Beyond the Venue podcast. When I started this project almost 4 years ago, I had absolutely no idea that I would be the one navigating beyond the venue by returning to the classroom. Before diving into my second year as a doctoral student, I figured it was a great time to wrap up this podcast by offering my listeners a variety of perspectives and experiences of life in academia. This semester, you'll be hearing from my friends, colleagues, classmates, and more, all of whom I've had the pleasure of working with since my return to Temple University a few years ago. Let's hear from them now. My guest today is my friend and neighbor, Kel. Welcome, Kel, to the show. How are you today?
I am doing all right. I am fresh off a bike ride and I'm excited for this conversation.
Love it. And so this is actually, this is my fourth and final season of Beyond the Venue podcast. And because this started as a pandemic project and just the nature of how everything goes, this is my first ever in-person live podcast recording. So, full disclosure, when Kel moved in, I was super excited to have another, not only an academic, someone who's super awesome, but a fellow dog parent. And so you joined the block of dog parents. And so right now, in an effort to keep the dogs on the quieter side, our dogs are currently having a cuddle puddle with Bob upstairs next door at my house. So hopefully, since they're on the second floor, we're on the first floor, like we haven't heard anything so far. I think gotten pictures from Bob. They look like they're having a good time already. But yeah, so super excited this worked out. I know you're crazy busy. Summer's been insane. So thank you so much for making the time today. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. So, usually there's more of a backstory of how I've met my guests, but it's like you bought the house next door into speech. And then we would come to find out that we had mutual friends in common. And so, Philly's just the tiniest city in the world. And so it's been great kind of having those connections and getting to know you, since you moved in last year. So tell me all about your backstory. Like, share with our listeners, like, how did you get to where you are now?
A lot of Diet Coke and good friends. Yes, it started with a woman named Barb and a man named Todd. I can maybe shortcut through a little bit some of my upbringing and think about when I got to Philly, actually, because it almost feels like a little bit at the point at which I entered my adulthood. I mean, may have been my mid-20s at that point, but also it was like, just a significant pivot of coming into my own. So I came to Philly, I guess it was 2007 or something. I had graduated from bachelor's program at University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I grew up in Ohio, and then I went to undergrad in UW-Madison. And I'd done a lot of work in housing and housing justice and homelessness. And I had been working throughout school at a shelter, running like the emergency drop-in part of the shelter. And Madison was this like gorgeous place for ideas. Like, it's a place where you can just go and sit and think. And it's really beautiful for that. But one of the things that I found over and over again was that it was a harder place to actually practice the things we were learning. So people had grand ideas about the world, but then the moment you walked outside of the academy, like the application of them was not so encouraged. And so this shelter, it was a Salvation Army shelter, had a lot of anti-LGBTQ policies. And I just kept running again and again into being unable to actually change things. And so after maybe a year and a half of working there, after I had graduated from undergrad, I was like, I'm going to go pursue a master's of social work degree in order to be in a position to be able to shift things like this. And so that's actually started looking around. To be honest, Philly has always felt a little bit like Cleveland. I think Philly.
Had you been to Philly prior to all this? Did you have friends here? Did you come to visit? Or was it just like, I know it's there.
Liberty Bell.
I had a class field trip there. Like, had you been here before, or you're just like, I like the idea of it?
I think it was just the idea of the vibe. I was like, these folks are like forward and gritty and truth talkers, and there's like a lot more lot more room to explore than in the Midwest, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of different ways that I can go. I know that this place is going to challenge me.
Yeah.
And it did.
And it has.
It's a really challenging place, to say the least. But I love it so much. But yeah, no, I had started looking around for programs, was placing emphasis on where I could get some, some financial support. And also turns out, and this like goes against all the rest of my story. So again, ideas versus practice. Penn's SB2 Social Policy and Practice program was the only one with a mandatory anti-racism sequence.
Oh, and that was back in 2007?
Yep.
Wow.
So what that signaled to me, theoretically at least, was a commitment, like an institutional commitment to this. And was able to get some resources from them. So yeah, I found an apartment on Craigslist and came,
as we do in 2007.
Yep. It was 38th in Lancaster. Oh, wow. I spent 2 years in West Philly before coming south. But so showed up here and then moved through my MSW program. And I think at that same time was also like coming more and more into my queerness.
Okay.
And in coming to think about and get language of social justice, just sort of funneled me at the end of the program into a position at the Attic Youth Center.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's then around like 2009. I don't know when I graduated, but ended up spending like 6 years or so running the training and education department at the Attic Youth Center, so the LGBTQ Center.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome. I loved it.
Can you share with our listeners a little bit more information about the Attic Youth Center for folks who are not in Philadelphia, especially might not be familiar with it at all?
Sure. Yeah. It's a queer and trans youth center serving young people in Philly, ages 14 to 23. I guess my information's a little bit dated, so it could be also could be that like
this is what it was at the time that
at the
for
time.
them. Yeah, that's fair.
And I mean, it does a lot of drop-in supports. It's first and foremost a community space for people to young folks to come together and form strength in community. And then it has some different support services built in. There's after school groups to explore different interests, topics, dancing, arts, culture, politics, whatever. And then they've got therapists there. And then the part of the center that I ran was the Education and Training Institute. So I worked with a crew of young people to develop curricula to go out then to the primary spaces that are impacting queer and trans young folks, specifically queer and trans young folks of color in Philly, and to run trainings that ran from gender 101 all the way to trans young people in the juvenile justice system. Went out to, over the course of those years, probably trained 8,000 or 9,000 people. And loved it. I loved getting to work with young folks and support them using what I had learned through my MSW to support them in mapping out these systems that impacted their lives so much, but that they were never supported to be fluent in, right? When you get incarcerated, you don't immediately understand the map of the criminal justice system.
Oh, of course.
And so your ability to then navigate through it and advocate for yourself is limited. And so it felt really great to work alongside them to sort of shift the balance of power a little bit more into their hands.
Yeah.
And also just to work with everyday folks who are working in child welfare, juvenile justice, education, and to find out what was blocking them from supporting young people in their care and work with them. So yeah, I was there for maybe 6 years or so. And then there was this interesting pattern, I think. I don't know what activated me around this, but there was a young person in particular. They had started out as a young person at that point, maybe in their early 20s, who was so powerful and so smart. And I knew this human needed a position to execute their power. And I understood that as long as I held my position, I was blocking folks from moving upward.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so we had there were young people who would do speakers bureau work with me. There were also young people in internship positions. And then this particular young person moved through that trajectory and was working part-time, I think, with me. And so, yeah, it was their time and I needed to move.
Yeah. Everybody needed to go upwards.
Everybody needs to go upwards. And I didn't want to be someone who ended up holding a position for 20 years, like committed to what it was versus like letting it be what it could be. So that was my last year there. Was also the year I worked with a group of young people to co-write policy 252, just the school district's trans and gender nonconforming student policy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the swan song that we did, we had 2 days. The school district passed the policy. I don't know why. Obama's like Title IX guidance had just happened. It was just like right place, right time. Somehow this policy got through. We were like, okay, we need to train the district on it. And they were like, cool, we have no money and we'll give you 2 days.
That definitely tracks.
Let me tell you, I called every gay person I know and I was like, what are you doing on October 3rd? So we went out over the course of 2 days and trained every single teacher in the school district on this policy. Yep. And the next day was, I remember it was the day before election day, and someone muttered something about Sodom and Gomorrah to me as I was coming out of a high school where I had just done a training, and I remember being like, see you at the polls. Yeah. So but yeah, so that was then what happened at that point was I was looking around to be like, what's next for me? And there was actually a faculty member from the School of Social Policy and Practice that had worked with us on Policy 252.
Okay.
And had been doing some research projects with us, some like initial early stage PAR or participatory action research, because this was like a collaborative working with young people to pass this policy while also pulling together research to support its passage. And yeah, she had started to talk to me about whether or not I had ever considered a PhD program.
And that's where that seed was planted.
The seed was planted, and it
someone's always got to plant a seed.
It just shot up kind of right away. And I was like, I love teaching, I love reading. University has been like, classrooms have been some of the most transformative spaces for me. So sure.
Yeah. So when did you officially start a PhD program?
Was it 2017? Maybe.
Okay, so the fall of 2017.
Fall of 2017. That's right. It might have been 2018.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
20 really is it's like a Bermuda Triangle, like everything collapses into
You've got that, like, it's like there's one time period that was 2016 to 2020, and then you've got 2020, and then I kind of like a little bit beyond.
Yep.
And now I still feel like we're now entering kind of like that third major phase, like coming up in 2024.
Yeah.
So I somehow am very good at like remembering when things happen, but like in the last 8 years, it's been very difficult to be like, okay, when and where and how and what, and oh my God, that was how long ago, and what's so okay, so at some point in that time you started your PhD program. Did you, because of the research that your faculty advisor had kind of like looped you in with, were you aware of a dissertation topic at the time? Were you like, what was, again, a million years ago, but like, do you remember kind of like where your headspace was at? Because I know every guest that I've had so far on this season, they've all been at different phases of like, I knew that a PhD was a right fit, but I'm maybe not very sure about like a dissertation topic, which is fine. Some folks who are working on their dissertation now, some folks who just finished. So do you even remember kind of like where you were at in that space mentally with what you wanted to get out of the program?
Yeah, I definitely came in with a commitment to continuing research on and doing dissertation work around queer and trans issues, young folks, like youth power. Another point of interest was in social work education, and to what extent social work programs are or are not preparing students to hold an understanding of structural oppression that is impacting the folks that they're working with. And so specifically also then was interested in how social work schools were preparing folks to work with queer and trans young people. And so my research, and I think also because of the interest, that faculty member became my advisor. Of course. Fantastic. This human is like even as the journey that I've taken has diverged from the straight and narrow through the world of academia, this person is just like through and through lives for students in a way I'm sure you've experienced, where you just can clock in a faculty member that you're like, this is a labor of love for you, and you're willing to take hits for that love. And I fell into the care of like someone really extraordinary. And we also had we had already worked as like kind of colleagues in community, and so was able to step into a number of research projects with her. And the coursework was fine.
Did you almost feel like you were not like duplicating your efforts, but did it feel like you were almost like taking the same classes as you did as a master's student? Did it feel a little repetitive? Because like I'd be curious if to get like a master's and a PhD in something similar, would the coursework be similar? Because we've also had master's students attend some of our like doctoral level classes. So for me, it's two completely different worlds, because mine were like 12, 13 years apart, and one was hospitality and now I'm in education. So it's very nice to have like two completely different subsets. But was the coursework like maybe not as jazzy, intriguing? Like, were you there more for the research than having to do the coursework, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I love being in class. It's a book club, right? Yeah. I mean, you're just in a damn book club and you're like, I love writing, I love reading. I'm currently in 2 different study groups just for fun. And so that was something I really looked forward to.
I love looking at it like a book club. Like that's brilliant. It totally makes sense. But well, and some books are not as interesting as others.
Some books are bad.
Some books are very dry and difficult to get through. But
one of the main differences, and I think something that made that I continued to grade against in the program, was that at the PhD level and at a research one, an R1 institution, we are being trained to become experts, not actually practitioners. And so the MSW program, all of the content was based around the assumption that we would be interfacing with everyday humans as our work. And I actually think I really struggled in the PhD level because there was no real, I mean, a DSW is the practice-based doctoral of social work degree. But I continued to rub against the desire to think about how this information impacted people. And like all of my questions were around like, and so what? Right. It never came in being like, I want to just research for research's sake. I don't have questions that I just want to sit and think about forever. And I felt, I mean, that was the main initial piece of rub with the PhD program, is feeling so far away from community. Even as we were thinking about them at a million miles above the ground. And also like this, there was something to like, there's power in being someone who gets to speak on behalf of a community. And that power didn't feel comfortable for me to pursue. And that is what a PhD at an Ivy League R1 is. You're supposed to become the expert. And I was like, I really struggle with that. So a lot of my work looked like more like PAR, or looking at like the inherent expertise of the research subject as opposed to the researcher. Like my work started to reflect my discomfort with my position in the academy.
What is PAR?
Participatory action research. So there's that. Then there's CPAR, is critical participatory action research. YPAR, youth. It usually has some sort of action oriented, or it's based that around an action. So a community has identified something that they want. And then there's like, the community is trained in research methods to pursue that change and work with a researcher to collect the information, to like move through the change, to reflect on how it went, and to then like, engage in shared production and knowledge. So I was able to do a couple projects, co-authored a paper with some young people who I'd known from the attic. So really enjoyed that. But I over time, to be really honest, began to feel like profoundly lonely. My mental health started to really tank. I was coming into like a politically contentious relationship with the university. This was also approaching then 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so COVID had happened, and then George Floyd was murdered, and over the course of that summer was involved in a lot of the actions and
Mm-hmm.
response, and was in 676 and saw
Mm-hmm.
the tear gas,
Mm-hmm.
was on the banks of 676 when folks got tear gassed. And then Walter Wallace was killed when his family called for a mental health crisis in West
Mm-hmm.
Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And West Philly is one of the like highest, University City is one of the highest policed neighborhoods in the country. I think it maybe has 5 police forces that are overseen at any time, and one of them is Penn's police. And I think at that point, to see the social work school not have anything to say,
Mm-hmm.
to me was like sort of one of the final straws. And like, there's not an interest in applying these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Again, to go back, I was like, you would think if we are producing information, we are a commitment to folks who are marginalized and oppressed by like a structure not built for human life, that surely when someone calls for mental health and is killed, and this school rests on a police force that was involved, surely they would have something to say about it besides their regrets. And so I think that was my point of,
I got to get out of here.
Yeah,
my time here is done.
I'm actually not gonna, this is going to impact me in a long-term way if I don't move myself out of it. And so, yeah, it took, and again, my advisor was stunning. She was just, and
was she very, I guess, like supportive and like trying to like, was she integral in like kind of helping you find the position that you would end up going on to have, or was she connected to that at all?
She wasn't. Yeah, but she had known me before, and I think she was seeing me struggle.
Right.
And was like, I see your light is going out. Like, I don't. And so did help me advocate for, after I finished my coursework, I finished my exams. And then it was, about the next stage was going to be writing up a proposal. And
okay, so you did complete your coursework, and you did complete, do they also call it comps?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you completed your comps.
That hellish experience.
Wasn't.
Yeah.
So you completed your comps, and then, so I guess instead of like signing up for that class where you start to do your dissertation proposal, you're like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to move on to something else.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's still at that point though, I was imagining a return.
Right.
And I had done well in my courses. I had 7 publications in 2 years. I like finished the exams. I still had ideas around a proposal. But I knew that if I was going to take a leave of absence for 6 months or a year, I needed to get a job.
Okay. Yeah.
So I started to look around at positions. I interviewed for a bunch of places in Philly. And then there was this org that it's a national capacity building organization that focuses on the youth organizing field in the US.
Okay.
So how do we build up youth organizing groups' ability to advocate for their communities' right to self-determination, whatever changes that might be, if it's environmental justice, immigration justice. But so anyhow, I had known this organization because I'd used their research when I worked at the Attic.
Oh, yeah.
To advocate for the Attic to do more community organizing oriented work, to really like lean into doing political work with young people. And I remember my mental health was so low at that point. I remember interviewing for this position and feeling like 3 kids like stacked in a trench coat, pretending to be an adult, like one of those days. And I ended up getting an offer, and that was 5 years ago, and I'm still there today.
Awesome.
I did not actually foresee initially when I took that leave that I would fall into something that would like give me this level of like purpose and intention. And so that, played a big role in then what was next for me.
And I mean, it sounds like this was very cathartic, life-saving, like just very transformative for you of, and that's amazing that you were able to even, I guess, like go through that interview process, even when you don't feel like yourself at all. And, obviously you had zero need to ever have imposter syndrome, but, I can see where like you just needed something. You just needed that one thing. Like, I'm glad that they were able to do that for you. Which they probably didn't even realize it at the time, but I'm sure they do now.
100%.
Have you still been able to continue to do research with your former faculty advisor? Like, have y'all kept in touch? And yeah, do you still publish with her, or?
I think I maybe had a paper or two that were still being completed at that time. There's a couple other folks that I was writing with, a faculty member at Hunter in particular.
At New York?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, CUNY. And so I think I maybe was finishing those up. I was still in the program. I was on a leave of absence at that point. And so, yeah, I was not particularly active. Also just sort of swimming in a new position, and
Right.
a position that had like a lot of knowledge production associated with it. So yeah, I did not pursue any like new research projects. I'm in the last 2 months or so, I've been working with someone on a publication, someone I had written with during my time in the PhD program, but yeah, sort of pivoted away from like peer-reviewed publications at that point. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're in a position that you love now. And had you toyed with the idea of doing something different?
Yeah. So I had like thought, actually this past fall, I had started to think, I think the faculty advisor reached out and been like, what are you thinking? Blah, blah, blah. And, it gave me pause. I had been at this org for 4.5 years, was thinking about like, what does leadership look for me next here? Like, how am I continuing to grow? Similar questions I was asking at the attic, like just trying to be reflective about my relationship to a position. If I'm doing the position in the org justice, whatnot. And also still being like, and I would love to teach someday, you know, and here's this degree. And yeah, so that was September of 2023. And then over the course of fall and winter, I'd started to think about it more earnestly. And two things happened. One was October 7th happened, and Penn's response and continued response to like young folks expressing concern for Palestinian life, and having that be cracked down so hard by this university that's ostensibly founded for young people to learn and express their will. I mean, that I think for me was a thing. Penn's ultimate deference to a board of trustee billionaire CEO of a private equity firm over the will of its students to stop tens of thousands of lives being taken on our dime. I think that for me, I was like, I actually can't, I cannot be at this place right now until
And this makes so much more sense now, because I did not really know your backstory of like your time while you were getting your PhD. And so now this makes a hell of a lot more sense of why why you left, and why at this particular time in history that it is not your time to go back. But I mean, it's is there ever a possibility of doing something like that at another university? And so it's still, the possibility still exists. And you have a master's degree, so you can adjunct but who has the time to adjunct when you work a full-time job?
Adjuncting is basically also volunteer work. I mean, like pay wise.
Exactly. And it's adjuncting is a lot of fun, and it's wonderful when you have a business that's not making you any money. And so when you can supplement your non-existent income with adjuncting. But so it's teaching will always be here for you.
Whenever I get the opportunity to facilitate at work, I feel that same energy again. And there are times where I get to like interface with and support direct work with youth organizers, as well as with folks in philanthropy through my position now. And I feel it like course through my body, and be like, the power of like creating space for folks to like come into their fullest is yeah, it's like the stuff of magic. And I continue to, whether it's at a community college, I'm not committed to having a high like profile or high power position in academia, but I do really crave to be back in the classroom creating those spaces. Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that you're passionate about, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. Did you see what I did?
And puns are also a passion. That was stunning. Oh shit.
Being with Bob for the last 13 years, I've gotten a lot better with, oh my goodness gracious.
No,
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like I've gotten a lot better with my titles for these podcast episodes, like because like the puns are like rubbing off on me. So
this is new trivia about Bob.
Yes,
I feel connected to him.
Okay. Well, you know, a punny afternoon. Honey stew pang. But yes, so you're very passionate about cycling, biking. How do you refer to it? Because I am not. I did
love that for you.
I was like, that was one of the first questions when you were moving in. It's like, I think, do you bike? Do you cycle? I was like, absolutely not. I don't. I think the last time I was on a bike was when the Pope was here in 2015 and they closed the streets down.
You couldn't drive.
Yeah. And so my friends and I got some Indigo bikes and went through the city, and it was phenomenal. But because there were no cars.
That would be really nice to have that.
It was
if cars continue to be a problem. Yeah.
But yeah, so tell me all about your passion for the two-wheeled
life,
two-wheeled monster.
The two-wheeled monster. It's interesting. The word cycling also feels weird to me sometimes. I'm like, it makes me feel like a man named Dave who like rides a $12,000 bike, you know, and like who like shaves my body to be faster. But then biking, I'm like, well, no, I'm a little too fast to call myself a biker. Like, I'm a little pricier than that. So I don't know what it is in between. But yeah, during that same time when everything was crashing down, with like around the time of like COVID, withdrawing from the PhD program, the 2020 protests, I was going through a breakup. I had gone by a real hard breakup, just cherry on the whatever. And I had gone to stay with my family in Ohio, and my brother gave me a bike that he had like Frankenstein together, and he just like pieced this thing together. And he was like, take this back to Philly with you, ride it every morning. I want you to call me after you ride it. Like really just like his like commitment to getting me back on my feet, as it were, actually was like the thing that birthed this relationship to my bike. And so
interesting. Okay.
I mean, I talk about like the pillars on my life stool, and it's like therapy, friends, and biking.
Yeah.
And those are the things that like I just, it's interesting for something that has some level of danger, a lot of danger associated with it, and like I've lost folks to cars, but it is a, I get really dorky about it. It is a life force for me. I have found an extraordinary community of like women, trans, femme cyclists. Philly has an awesome, like whether it's teams or groups. So yeah, I ride with a team now. I was on like a racing development team that was they do every year, and had a year of trying out racing, and ride a couple times a week now with some friends. There's something about like when you're on a bike, you have to be alert, right? Like if I look left, my bike goes left. So I have to be present in my body, but there's also this like almost ethereal, like floating above that happens, that I think is part like the bilateral stimulation allows for like a clarity of mind that just, there's nothing like it. That, and then also like doing, we'll do longer routes, like a 50 or 60 or 70, and you're working together as a pack. And
you've talked about community, like having that lack of community before, that was bringing that all together for you in a time when you needed it the most. And that's beautiful.
100%. Yeah. Riding in a pack, like just makes my most animal self feel really safe and set.
And I know over the summer you're like, I'm just gonna ride out to Linvilla Orchards, and I'm like, I don't want to drive out there. Like
that cider donut tastes so good. That's the other thing about eating becomes a lot more fun when you ride bike, because I'll get back from like a super long bike ride and I was like, I need a steak right now. Like the way I relate to that steak is somehow different. Like, it's so. Yeah.
Like I earned
it. Yes.
Like hardcore.
I will eat this all right now. The one thing about Lynn Villa is they do have good beer, and when you get there on a bike, you can't enjoy the beer like you otherwise.
Right.
So that is a limitation of the Lynn Villa ride.
Yeah.
Delco is my favorite place to ride also. So
interesting. Okay. Is like particular parts, because I know like there's like Ridley Creek Park. Like I know there's like a lot of like state parks, local parks, national parks like located in that area. So is it, are there just like some great trails, or is it
vibes?
Wawas?
Yeah, you know, there are abundant Wawas in Delco. There's good trails. You know, we ride a lot out on Mainline or Montgomery County, in part because or Chester County, the streets are so good because it's wealthier, right? So like you got fancier streets, and so it's good riding.
Right.
And in Delco, there's like potholes and stuff all over the place, but I don't know, for some reason, like the community itself feels more enjoyable to ride in. It's more fun to like pull over to a taco stand or stop at a Wawa and chat someone up. Even as there's more potholes. And then there's also there's beautiful parks that are sort of peppered throughout there.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love getting all these backstories. It's like I feel like I know like certain snippets of your life, and I'm enjoying putting all these like puzzle pieces together. So another puzzle piece I'd love to discuss. We have a new roommate. So you would let me know that your friend was moving to Philly. And he just moved in recently. And you also said, I was super bummed that he wasn't able to join us today. But now I kind of feel like he might have been like the third wheel in terms of like like this has been an excellent Kel show, but I was interested in hearing about Jamie's PhD work. Which look forward to getting to know him as time moves on, and I'll happy to interview him off camera to have that conversation with him. But you said you guys have this very interesting story, interesting tapestry. So let us know about our new roommate Jamie.
Spill the tea on Jamie. I'm so excited for you to get to have that conversation with him and talk to him about his PhD experience and about education. He's a pretty extraordinary human. He and I met, he was working in the Mazzoni Center and I was working in the attic. Okay. Just some young people. We were probably on a committee together.
Can you tell our listeners about the Mazzoni Center real quick?
Yep. Mazzoni Center is an LGBTQ health center in Philly. And so I believe at that time, Jamie was working with their GSA program, the Gay Straight Alliance program. Or doing their safe schools work. So we had some parallel work just kept overlapping. Had a lovely year and a half of dating, as you do when you're 26 and you're on a committee with someone who's cute over and over again. And he then, we had a very lovely breakup as well. He was in a PhD program and was like fairly stressed and had a lot of, he was primarily dating the PhD program, I think, as one does.
Totally.
They call, what do they call it? Like there's bike widows is what they call folks whose spouse falls in love with biking.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's PhD widows as well.
Okay.
You like lose your spouse for a couple of years while they're in this program. But so, I think, I don't know, we just really anchored into one another's lives in a serious way. And this was, maybe 13, 14 years ago. But, both of us, I think, I'm 39, I'm going to be 40 this year. He's in his 40s and increasingly seeking like a sweet nesting partnership. I've been living alone for 8 years. I've been seeking someone to share my life with, someone to also buy half and half and toilet paper for the house, someone to like, help, like, the thing that anchors you in a nest. And it just was sort of kismet that we have both been seeking that. And to be honest, I've always wanted that, a platonic nesting partner. I've always had this dream of like golden girls, but we're not going to wait till our husbands die. Like we're going to start this now, and then like have lovely dating relationships throughout my life. But at the center is this one.
Yeah.
And so, we're testing out this experiment of doing that together. And there's, I like to say also that having dated one another, we've seen one another at each other's worst. So I feel like fairly confident living together.
Well,
like,
also
you've seen me at my
20s.
worst.
Like you're talking about if you dated in your 20s, you want to talk about the
the dumpster fire of a human. And so we still, like our communication's grown a lot stronger since. So he is like us, just such a tender and smart and fun human. I'm excited for y'all to get to know each other more too.
Is he still working in the same space as you, or is like what because did he move from California?
He had done like a 2-year stint
Okay.
out in Santa Cruz, so he grew up in Philly.
Okay.
From Philly. And
no,
so
is he from Philly or is he from like suburbs?
He lived, I think, a few places. That's a piece of trivia you might have to ask him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll add that to my note cards that I ask him off camera.
Yes. And then tell me. Know this. One of the things I also refer to him as is my external hard drive. My memory is trash. This human remembers everything. So know that when you talk to him, he will remember exactly what you said 10 years later.
Amazing.
So I believe he'll forgive me for not knowing the first couple places that he lived in.
Okay. Fair enough.
Even though he can probably tell you the time of day I was born, even though I don't remember it.
Was he working, is he able to work remote, or did he change jobs to come back to Philadelphia?
So he had been doing like a number of different contracted consulting gigs.
Okay.
He has created and done like a ton of work around education around racial microaggressions. That was his PhD, and got a lot of traction working at a couple orgs in Philly, and then started doing national work. And so he's now working with a couple national LGBTQ orgs doing racial microaggressions, trans education work, a number of different like facilitative roles at the center of like social justice issues.
I gotta read some of his publications.
Yep.
That is on the absolute to-do list. Well, I'm very excited for you both. Looking forward to getting to spend more time together.
Yeah.
Again, off camera. So Kel, the last question that I ask all of my guests is, what's your favorite venue? Do you have one? I feel like it might be anywhere where you are on a bicycle. Might be the response. You are allowed to have multiple. That's totally fine. But is there any kind of like particular venue that really speaks to you?
You know, I was trying to think of like a cooler. I was like, I'm talking to a venue person. I should like try to think of like what's an edgy place I know of, or like what's some sort of underground situation. How do I make myself look cool? I just love World Cafe Live. I love that place. I love it so much. I don't know why. The energy, maybe the lighting is right, but also I'm old enough now. I want to be able to sit, and there's like easy access to a bar. The acoustics are sweet. I've seen a lot of like neo soul and like rootsy shows there, and so I just associate it with like a really warm and like nicely lit space.
It's a cool venue because you got the upstairs, you get the downstairs, you got it's a little bit of something for everybody. They do festivals, they do Quizzo nights, like they do it all. So no, that's a perfectly wonderful answer. Yes. And I hosted an event there when I first started my business. I hosted an event called a Sip and Swap. So the idea is like clean out your closet, bring stuff that you would like, we put them all on like hangers and racks and stuff, and like put it out like much like it's almost like walking into Green Street consignment. And you can pick through, decide like, do I like this, does it fit me? And then we ended up just pretty much donating everything that didn't go to the wardrobe, formerly Career Wardrobe. Because it was a lot of the like kind of like stuff you could wear to a job interview, things like that. So it was a lot of fun, and we were able to do it on the second floor, like or like on that like
the street level.
It was a lot of fun. We had a great time. Yeah.
The place, is that cool? Is that a cool answer?
I mean, anything you say would be cool. Like it's what's in here. It's in your heart. It's what means the most to you. But it also makes sense because like you spent time in West Philly, like into like your formative years. And so it is nice to know that you also had a place that brought you joy out that way.
It did. I also, one of the other places I was thinking about, do you remember Elena's Soul that was next to Cedar Park, the diner on Baltimore? There was this place called Elena's Soul, and it was awesome. It burned down a couple years ago, I guess, but downstairs would be like a really beautiful mixed group of folks like from around the neighborhood. The back, they'd have like a 4-person jazz band. And then you'd open the door to go upstairs, and like the smell of people not wearing deodorant and like a pulsing beat would be coming down the stairs, and there'd be a massive dance party happening upstairs. So again, it was one of those places like many things happening at once.
Yeah.
But everyone coming together.
I think because, so I went to Drexel for my undergrad. So like living in West Philly from like 2000 to 2005, like it was like, I'm good. Like I went back, working in the beer industry, like I spent my time over there working in the beer industry, but like for the most part, like that wasn't like sign me up to go like hang out and socialize. But and that's kind of the irony now of like being back at Temple. Like there's not, I mean, even the Draft Horse wasn't very good, but at least there was a bar like kind of like on campus. It was big enough to like do happy hours and things like that. And so like there's not really a whole lot. I think Maxie's is it's so but we're all adults. We can go to Center City.
Yeah.
We
or
can
just stay in South Philly like we do. Yeah.
It is nice to get out of the neighborhood though sometimes. It's like a whole new but
yeah, you're right.
But yeah. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm really glad we were able to make this happen. So thanks for being on my show today. And I'm, excited to meet Jamie, and, looking forward to continuing the conversation. So have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much. You too.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode from the 4th and final season of Beyond the Venue podcast. New episodes of this final season will drop on Fridays throughout the fall semester. Follow Beyond the Venue podcast on Instagram for details and updates about each episode, and stream all 4 seasons on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks so much for your support.